Good afternoon. It is April 13th, and I am going over the agenda for you guys for April 13th through the 17th, so just this week. I'm sharing my Canvas screen for you, and so I just wanted to kind of walk through this. The first thing you're going to do today, or this week rather, is to read this short story called The Pedestrian. This is another work by Ray Bradbury, and it's the second thing that we read usually to prepare for Fahrenheit 451. And so we're still trying to kind of figure out how we're going to approach Fahrenheit, which we'd love to read, and the students always love it. So I'll keep you posted on that, but we are going to start with this background text. So The Pedestrian is a short story, and the things that you're going to notice or pay attention to specifically are where the people are, how they're described in the story, and what they're doing. I'm going to give you a little bit of background that we talked about on the Zoom call today. You'll notice in the first paragraph of that story, I'm going to go ahead and bring it up right now, is that the main character is Mr. Leonard Mead, and he is living in this world of AD 2053. And so I want you to keep in mind that this was written by Ray Bradbury about 1953. So this is his vision of 100 years in the future. So if you imagine writing some sci-fi book about, the world in 2120, what you would put in there. What's amazing about Bradbury, and all of his work shows this, is that he had an uncanny ability to see where the future was kind of headed. And he often had kind of warnings about technology and being too dependent on technology. So The Pedestrian is about a man who is walking the streets. He's just taking a walk in this year 80 AD 2053. So a pedestrian is just someone who's taking a walk, and he's the most important character in the story, so that's what it's called. So keep that in mind. This is AD 2053, and yet you're going to see a lot of similarities with where we are right now with this COVID-19, which is a bizarre connection that no other class has, because nobody else has lived through this. So you're going to have a very unique perspective on this story. After you read it, of course, the agenda says that you're going to annotate it. Here are directions for if you have a printer and you can print off the text. You're going to chunk it by drawing at least one line on each page. So that means that you're going to have 2 chunks per page. So essentially, you're going to cut each page in half and annotate each of those half. In the left column, so over here, in the left column, you're going to write your summaries. This is what you do anyway. You naturally make summaries for what you read. Make it clear. Don't say something like, this shows Bob's true feelings. Be clear about what Bob's true feelings were. Over here, you're going to write any sort of connection or observation or question or prediction. You're going to always do that on the right side. And then inside here, you're going to highlight important information. So for instance, I would highlight for sure this: he was alone in the world in 2053, or as good as alone. So maybe not physically alone, but just as good as alone. And what does that mean? There are some kind of important things to note, especially in the second paragraph. And I'm going to go ahead and walk you through that. It says sometimes he would walk for hours and miles and return only at midnight to his house. And on his way, he would see the cottages and homes with their dark windows. And it was not unequal to walking through a graveyard where only the faintest glimmers of firefly light appeared in flickers behind the windows. Sudden gray phantoms, like ghosts, seemed to manifest upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn against the night, or there were whisperings and murmurs where a window in a tomb-like building was still open. If it were me, I would have highlighted all of those words that contribute to this motif or this idea of death, darkness, right? Midnight, dark. At a funeral, what do? You're whispering and murmuring. And this idea of death and phantoms and graveyard and a tomb And how does that relate to society? It is not that this character is actually alone. It is not that everybody is actually dead. They're not like zombies. So what is he referring to? That's what you're going to kind of look through. So after you annotate this text, which again, in the left, you put your summary for each chunk, at least 2 per page. On the right, you write questions, connections, predictions, observations, and then within the chunk, you're highlighting the important information. After you've annotated the text, then you're going to submit those annotations here. So number 5 tells you where to go. If you don't have a printer and you can't print off the text, let me go back a little bit. You can open it in the Google Docs and make a copy. You're going to click File and then make a copy. And then you'll insert your annotations using this comment box. And then you'll highlight the important information using this highlighter. So I'm very clear in these directions of how to kind of work around if there's no way for you to do that, okay? After you've submitted your annotated text, then you're going to come here to the reading questions about the story. You're going to have to use some of your annotations for that to answer these questions. Make sure that you include textual support, that you use this tool, spelling and grammar, before you turn them in. And then you're going to turn in your reading questions here. Now, here's where it gets really good. Now, number 7, we are moving in the next couple weeks into a writing focus. Normally, you would write a literary analysis about this piece, but we did not think that that was feasible if you're not with us in class. So we've shifted a little bit, and instead you're going to write your own version of The Pedestrian. And it's really interesting because right now, with the shutdown and stay-at-home orders, we are living in a world that is very similar, though for different reasons, what Leonard Mead experienced. And so this is going to be really interesting. You cannot do number 7. You cannot skip all this and just start writing if you don't know the version that Bradbury wrote, because you're writing a model of that. So you have to read through and learn this, okay? It should have a minimum of 3 paragraphs, and we're talking about like substantial paragraphs, okay? Here are some pre-writing things that you could do to kind of get into the mood. If you can, encourage you to get out and go for an actual walk around your neighborhood. Try to unplug. Don't have music playing. Don't be on your phone. Like literally just walk and try to notice the world. Are there people out enjoying the weather? How loud are the birds? Whatever, okay? Jot down your thoughts and what you notice. And this idea of what you notice once you finish The Pedestrian, it should be kind of clear why that's important. But do you notice things in nature? Are you seeing things that maybe you don't notice before? There's a sense of being grateful for things we took for granted before. On our Zoom call this morning, we filled in the chat box for that. Like what normal thing do you miss that you took for granted before? Like for me, just going to a Mexican restaurant and having chips and salsa, not worrying about getting the coronavirus from my waiter, right? Like just normal stuff. So this is also what Mead does. He notices things that no one else notices as he's walking. So notice those things. When you're ready to start your story, you can organize it this way. Paragraph 1, you can read that. Paragraph 2, paragraph 3. These are just ideas. You don't have to do this, but this is just a way to organize it. I will always tell you that if you can start in your brain with the lesson of the story, then you can build your story from that. So in other words, what do you want your reader to understand is the lesson? And then build your story to get us there. That's one thing I would say in terms of writing this rough draft. When you're finished with your story, again, you'll do the tools, spelling and grammar, and then you will submit that here, okay? So your assignments for this week, number 1 is the annotations on The Pedestrian. Number 2, it's the reading questions about The Pedestrian. And number 3, it is your own version of The Pedestrian. Those are the 3 things that we are turning in this week. Last thing I want to leave you with is just an update on your grades. The district has disabled our grade books in home access, and they do not want us to enter any sort of numeric grade because we're on a pass-fail basis now. anywhere. And so what I wanted you to know is that I am going through what you're turning in, and I'm keeping a paper grade book, but you're not going to, this point on, you're not going to be able to see a grade in Canvas, if that makes sense. They don't want us to enter any numeric grades anywhere because we're on a pass-fail system. And in fact, I sent an email to Mr. Hadley this morning to confirm that. So I want you to know I'm reading it. I'm keeping my paper grade book of work that you've done. It matters. It's going towards your pass for the fourth quarter. I'm really proud of you guys for working so hard, but you're not going to see it in Canvas, but I don't want you to think I'm not paying attention. I am, and I'm following up on that. All right, so that's your stuff for this week. Miss you guys. If you need anything, let me know. And I will be available on Wednesday from 11 to 11:30 for office hours. Feel free to stop in, use that time to work, or ask questions. Have a great Monday.